Welcome to How to Make Films and Influence People.
Hey everybody, and welcome to How to Make Films and Influence People with Peter and Andrew, where we talk about our own approach to screenwriting and filmmaking, discuss great works of cinema, and blasphemously imagine how they could be remade. This week we'll be talking about Goodfellas and catching up on the past 10 films that we have watched. This is our 40th episode, and so we're going to look back at the 10 last episodes, 10 last films that we've discussed, hand out some awards. I know all the filmmakers behind all those films are anxiously awaiting our decision. But first of all, I'm Peter, successful filmmaker, film professor, and screenwriter. And this is Andrew.
Filmmaker, screenwriter, but not a member of the mafia by choice. They've asked. Okay. I said no.
They desperately want you in, and you're like, I've got better things to do.
This podcast, I told them, just can't leave it.
That's right. That's right. This is really keeping kids off the street. That's what we aim to do here.
That's what it is, yeah. Filmmaking is a way to just keep kids off the streets. That's why we do it.
Well, and I'm really excited to talk about the wonders of Goodfellas. I think it's a very fun film to talk about. But we want to let you, the listeners, in on the last films that we've seen, and we like to do this every 10 episodes. Look back at the ones that we watched, give out some awards. This is it's thinking about our response to these films. So it's not the pure quality of the film. It's not based on their box office or how they did in the Oscars in the year that they came out. It's really how we responded to them. And so we have a number of categories, but first want to update you on, or just let you know, the 10 films that we'll be sort of choosing from as we discuss today. The 10 films will be Ron by Akira Kurosawa, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, Mulholland Drive, Cinema Paradiso, Truman Show, Donnie Darko, Children of Men, Night of the Living Dead, A Woman Under the Influence, and today's Goodfellas. So if any of you want to go back, listen to each one of those episodes before hearing our awards for today, please go do it. Return to us here. You don't need to listen to this live. In fact, I don't think you can. So take your time, soak in those episodes. But now we're going to tell you what we thought. And so the first award we're going to give out is for the best performance in a film. Which one stood out to you as the best single-person performance in one of these films?
Lots of good performances here. I was thinking of possibly Naomi Watts in Mulholland Drive, Joe Pesci in Goodfellas. I had to go with Gina Rowlands in A Woman Under the Influence. I feel like this is maybe one of the best performances I've ever seen. Just like in all time. This feels like an all-timer type of performance, and really blown away. Still thinking about that even after the fact, even though that movie's a little tough to watch. Her performance was just incredible. What'd you have?
Her performance really was amazing. I think Peter Falk, a little bit more understated in that, was really good. And I think there's so many great performances in this. But, what stood out to me, I really liked Ray Liotta in Goodfellas. And I think he often doesn't get as much attention. I mean, in some senses, he gets a lot of attention because he's the star of the film. But I think people often think of Robert De Niro or Joe Pesci as kind of the flashier roles in Goodfellas. Or Lorraine Bracco, also amazing performance in the film. But I think Ray Liotta, there's so many layers to the Henry Hill character that he brings in, and the idea that he's going to be the main character, but kind of an unlikable main character, and still center the film on. I think it's not the flashiest role, but he's carrying a lot of weight, and I think he does a really good job there.
That's a outsider's choice. I like it.
Outsider's choice. No one agrees. I think we'll talk more about Goodfellas.
Yeah, we'll get into Goodfellas later.
But okay, the next one we'll do is the best scene in a film. So the best single scene in one of these films. What stood out to you?
This may be a little cheating, but I feel like the scene in Children of Men where she has the baby all the way through to that like in the middle of the war, walking through the refugee camp. It's basically one scene. It's shot as a one scene.
Uh-huh.
And it's kind of long, but just that in general, I think is one of the standout scenes of any movie that I've seen. It's very memorable. I still think about it. I just wonder how they did it too. It just seems like a lot of work to get all of that timing and just everything to work out the way it did. And just the dynamics of it, of starting a baby's born and then you go into this war scene and it's like this reverence and then it goes back to battle. I think it's a really well done scene that stands out in that movie that's full of really good scenes.
That's a great choice. I was definitely thinking of that one. I think that's an amazing choice. I was thinking also of some of the battle sequences in Ron. I mean, just the colorful pageantry of that. I think that's on a scale you just won't see anywhere else. I think those are amazing. I think also in Goodfellas, there's the famous Copacabana scene as they enter or the Copa. Is it the Copa? Anyway, but there's also the scene of them eating at the mother's house. It's like when they're trying
so good,
to.
yeah.
I mean, there's so much there. But the scene that I went with is the Truman Show when his friend is telling him how genuine and true their friendship is. And we feel it, and it's so emotional. And then we see that he's being fed those lines from the producer. And I feel like it's just the film in microcosm. It's playing with our emotions as an audience. I think that's such a powerful, heartbreaking scene there in the Truman Show. So I guess that would be my award for that one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
All right. We are now going to go with the most fun watch. We're not, it doesn't have to be the best film. What do you sit down? You have the most fun watching it. What would you go with?
Fun. There's a bunch of fun movies we watched. I thought Donnie Darko was really fun. I thought Scott Pilgrim was really fun. For most fun, I think it's Goodfellas for me. This movie is just start to finish, high energy, lots going on. It just never lets up. I just find myself just always enjoying this movie, no matter how many times I've seen it. Very fun one, even though it's kind of about bad people. What it's about doesn't matter as much. It's just how it's done is done in a very fun way.
Absolutely. I think Goodfellas is definitely a fun one. I went with Mulholland Drive, which is, it's a little spooky. It's a little trippy, but I think it's like you are going on but I also think it's unique and it's a different kind of experience than a lot of films, but I think it actually is approachable. It's not, A Woman Under the Influence, very smart film, but it takes a little bit of investment to get it. Mulholland Drive, I feel like you could go along for the ride and you're going to go to places you did not expect to go. And I think that's kind of a fun trip, a fun experience of watching it that I liked.
Unexpectedness of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, then we've got three more. So, easiest film to recommend. What would you recommend? The easiest one to recommend to somebody else?
Yeah, some of these are easier than others. I was thinking of one that, if you want to recommend something that everybody could watch, a whole family could watch, not many of these films are that family friendly. I went with Truman Show because I think it's interesting. I think it's not going to be offensive to anybody. I think whoever you tell to watch this is going to have at least, an interesting experience because it does talk about things, unique things that you don't see in every movie. So I feel like this is one that whoever I'm talking to, if you haven't seen it, watch it. If you have seen it, they probably would be interested in watching it again. I think it's an easy one.
Yeah, I was sort of leaning toward Truman Show as well. Definitely in the spirit of it changes. I mean, I feel like a lot of people, whether or not they're that well versed in cinema history, will watch the Truman Show and be like, "Wow, those are some big thoughts in that." Yeah. And it's not just it's not a homework type of movie. It's an easy watch while still being very deep, I think. And I think that makes it pretty easy to recommend. And so I'll just stick with that. I think the case could be made for lots of these, but I will agree with you. I also go with the Truman Show.
Truman Show.
But now, flip side of that, and this is not a negative about the film, but hardest film to recommend. What would you go with?
Yeah, I was thinking of, I think Ron is a little difficult to recommend because it's foreign language, it's slow burn. Mulholland Drive could be a little difficult just because of how strange it is. I actually went with A Woman Under the Influence. I think even though this is English, it's a little more modern. It's from the 70s, so it's not that old, but it is just so tough to watch. Even though it's incredible, I feel like it's very just emotionally draining and just kind of a downer the whole time, but still an incredible film. So it's kind of like how do you recommend that to somebody? And if you like, I recommend you watch this movie. It's like, what are you saying about me if you think I want to watch this? So that's what I went.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's where I think that is also, to me, the choice of Woman Under the Influence. I was also thinking of Night of the Living Dead, which I think is a much easier watch, but I do think there's a challenge there of people feeling like they have seen that story a million times before, even though it was the first one. I think that there's a challenge of why would somebody takes your recommendation as whatever, it's the millionth zombie movie I've seen. Well, yeah, but it was kind of the first, but that would be hard to get across to somebody. But A Woman Under the Influence, it's also like, what is their evening going to look like if they've
What do you
don't
do
send
after
people
that?
on a date night to watch A Woman Under the Influence. That's going to be a rough
No.
one.
Yeah, that's like you watch it alone. You don't need somebody to watch that with you. So
No. You watch it alone, and then you go and try and mend your relationship but
you just
don't watch
think
it
about
together.
it.
Yeah. Okay, but we have now our last one, film that makes you think about the world in a different way.
I went with Mulholland Drive. I feel like this one I still think about. I think there's things you can think about in the film, about what the film is and just how it works. But I think that also just translates to how am I thinking about other things in life and like reality, and just questioning reality in ways you wouldn't think you would do after watching a movie. I don't know. There's something about this that, watched it the second time and I'm still like trying to wrap my head around the big themes in this, the message, what it is and isn't saying. And I think it just makes you think about things differently. I don't know. David Lynch is very good at that, though.
Yeah. I think I like that. And I think Mulholland Drive especially, just, your grip on reality and what even is life. I think that's
those are the questions you walk away with. You're like, what is life? You're like, I don't know. Okay.
I went, though, for this one, I went with Children of Men, that I think, and again, when we were discussing Children of Men, I said, I think a challenge is that it's so superficially accessible that I think you could watch Children of Men and feel like it's a good action movie. But I think when you take the time to linger on what it's really about, there's so many themes, so many thoughts about, how would you act if there's this Messiah baby coming, like what does that actually look like in the world? I also think its take on what this sort of peri-apocalyptic world, it's like not post-apocalyptic, it's kind of like while the apocalypse is slow happening, it's kind of what's happening in Children of Men. And I think that way of looking at, where does society start to break down? Where is it still hanging on? Like, what kind of relationships do we have? What kind of businesses do we have? What kind of class differences are there? All of those things that I think are really interestingly depicted in Children of Men. And I think oftentimes movies will skip to everything has fallen apart. And in Children of Men, it's in that phase where it still looks kind of like life now, and it kind of looks like post-apocalyptic, but we don't know which way the balance is going to tilt on that one. And I just thought it was so fascinating.
Yeah, it's like that middle ground area where you're like, oh, that's really interesting. That's a great movie too. Just
great
all-timer.
Movie.
Yeah.
I mean, I think all of these great movies in different ways. And so I recommend people watch all of them. Although it's harder for me to recommend A Woman Under the Influence, as we just said. But I think all of these are great. And go back and listen to our individual episodes on those. And we look forward to going through another 10 and then another 1,000 after that.
Duncan and Bliss.
All right, but that takes us to our film of the week. And this week we are talking about Goodfellas. What can you tell us about that, Andrew?
Goodfellas, 1990, directed by Martin Scorsese. The true story of Henry Hill, a half-Irish, half-Sicilian Brooklyn kid who's adopted by neighborhood gangsters at an early age, climbs the ranks of a mafia family under the guidance of Jimmy Conway. And I think that, they say this is a true story, and obviously it's stylized in some ways, but they really lean into this idea that it is like a memoir of sorts. Like, it is somebody, we have our main character, Henry, telling us his story from his perspective. And I thought that was a really interesting choice for this type of a movie, because at the very beginning you have this, it's a voiceover. You have a lot of these stylized elements to this film to really hammer home on this idea. You've got these like still frames, you have photos that they insert. There is like a lot of popular music that's put into this in certain places. And you have his perspective coming through a lot of this. And then at some point you have his wife's perspective as well, but kind of in relationship to who he is and her relationship to him. So I thought that was a really interesting choice of doing in a movie, because I haven't seen that very often, but I felt like it really worked really well. And just right from the get-go, you feel very involved in this story. And even though they're bad guys, and in the end, they kind of get what's coming to them, you really need that connection to start it off. Did you think that worked well? Did you like that aspect of the film?
Yeah, I mean, I think we really, we connect with them. I mean, and the movie starts with, and I think Martin Scorsese said he wanted the whole movie to feel like a 2.5 hour trailer, but that it starts with a bang, and there's just this big opening scene. But we get this voiceover from the Henry Hill character, and I think a lot of what this film is playing with is the reality of what it would be like to be at this level in the mafia. And Henry Hill is kind of an interesting character because he's not full Italian, and so he's sort of limited in what he can do, and he's married to a Jewish woman, so there's some limitations at how much he fits in. But so that almost gives us a little bit of like a insider-outsider perspective on what's going on. And I think that personal connection that we get through the voiceover really brings us in, because I think to me, the big comparisons that came before this are either The Godfather or a bunch of much worse mafia movies. And I think in the much worse mafia movies, it's just about these bad guys. They're just bad, and, they're cutthroat, and they're killing each other, and they're killing people, and they're bad, and it's kind of a simple kind of story. And then The Godfather brings this sort of high-mindedness to it, and it's more like a Shakespearean epic. And the Goodfellas story is much more like, what would it really be like for the people actually down on the ground? And I think it really immediately gets us into that.
That's a good point. Like, The Godfather feels kind of like old school, kind of classic, like Shakespearean in a way, versus this feels much more modern. It's high energy. It's got all, like, the editing in this is insanely good. Like, maybe one of the best edited films I can think of recently, of just how they're putting everything together. But it is very stylized. It's very flashy. It's like in your face. And that is like a stark contrast to how The Godfather comes at you, which is a much slower, kind of a slow burn pace of just seeping in on you and just kind of builds up. This is just from the get-go. It's there in your face. And it's pretty incredible how they're able to tell. It's not even a story of the whole mafia. It's just about one guy and his experience. And you don't really know from the start, where are we going? But you kind of don't care, because it's so interesting. The life of it is so interesting that, like, the plot of what does he need to do, or what's like the goal of this whole thing, isn't really as important as I just want to live in this world some more. This is just such an interesting world, presented in such an interesting way, that I can't get enough of it. And I just thought there's just not many films like that I can think of.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's such an interesting contrast to The Godfather, where you have that's really centering on the Corleone family, like the people at the very top, and they give, okay, we're going to the mattresses, we're going to war, and suddenly 50 guys show up with guns, but we don't know who those guys are necessarily, and Godfather doesn't really care. But in Goodfellas, it's about who are those guys, and I think it's such a distinction. And I think there's one big sequence. This is jumping ahead chronologically, but just as we're talking about this idea, there's one of the big parts of this film is the Lufthansa heist. So there's a heist the Lufthansa vault at, I think, JFK Airport, and they steal, I think, $6 million, but there's disagreement about how much money it is, something like that. But what's so interesting is you would expect in a movie this famous heist that really did happen where these people were involved, you would expect us to see all the planning going into it. You would expect us to see the tension of the heist happening. And that would be half an hour of the film, and we would love it. It would be, and Martin Scorsese could do an amazing job of showing us that heist, and we want to see it, but he doesn't let us see it. They plan for it, and Henry Hill is involved in that. And then he's in the shower listening to the radio, hearing about the heist having happened. And it's really because Henry wasn't involved in the actual heist. He was involved in planning it and then after the fact. But I think that's the discipline of that as a filmmaker to say, I know this would be an amazing thing to show, but it doesn't fit with Henry's story. Henry wasn't there, so I'm not going to skip ahead and just show you other people's perspectives on this. Henry wasn't there, so we're watching this from Henry's perspective. I thought, I don't think I would have the confidence to do that as a filmmaker. It's like you have this amazing sequence there that's just you've set up for, and then you just say, nope, not going to show you.
Not going to show you. Yeah, because you're watching and you're like, oh, it's over? Like it happened? And he's just excited that it happened. But yeah, it's him that it's about. The story's about him, and if he's not involved, then we're not showing too much of what else is involved if he's not there and if he can't narrate or at least give us perspective on it. But that scene, there's so many scenes like that in this movie where you could do a whole movie just based around that idea. That heist, there's other heists that they do. There's people that get killed. I think all of this, it just moves so fast. It's like he's just recalling, oh yeah, this is what happened. And then you move on. Here's what happened next. And it's crazy that you can get away with that. I don't even know if get away with, it works really well because you just are already on to the next thing. And you're like, okay, well, I know there's more coming down the line. I want to see what's next. And so you almost don't even miss it. Would I have liked to see the Lufthansa heist? I'm sure it would have been really cool footage, but there's so much going on in this movie that you don't need it, and you're not going to miss it if it's not there. There's just so jam-packed.
I agree. I would say, I think that getting away with it is not a terrible turn of phrase because I think this is the kind of thing that a lesser filmmaker would do because they don't think they could pull it off. They think, I don't know that I could pull off the scale of the heist. It's going to look too cheap if I try to do it, or it's not going to work out, or we tried to do it, it didn't cut together right, and now we just have to skip ahead. So I think there are a lot of cases in the film Wet Hot American Summer. I don't know if you've seen that, but there's a whole sequence. I mean, and that's a spoof movie, but there's a whole sequence where this guy is, Ken Marino is saving people from a waterfall. This raft of campers is about to fall over a waterfall. And he's about to go for it. We cut to a guy standing on the shore who's just narrating what's happening. Oh, he's not going to make it. Oh, he does. Oh, he does. Oh, he saves him. I can't believe it. I mean, I feel like that is the cheater way to do it. And yet that's what Scorsese does here, not because he's cheating, but because he's just sticking to that discipline of showing Henry's story. And I think that takes so much confidence as a filmmaker to do something that could be mistaken for bad filmmaking. Right. And I think to say I know this film is good enough that no reasonable person is going to say, I took the cheap way out of not showing that heist.
Yeah. And you do get the sense in this that he had the budget to do what he wanted. There's just so many scenes and so many people in different places. This must have taken so long to film all these different sequences. They even have those when he's talking about, oh, we went to Miami or we did this and this, and they have pictures of the event. You're like, well, they had to go there and they had to set that up, set that whole photo up that they're just showing photos of, or these little montages. So it's not like he didn't have the means to do all this. He just very specifically wanted it the way it was. And it seems like his eye for this, of what this story was, he knew from the beginning. It never lets up that it's going to sway from, we're talking about this person or kind of this couple. And he just never leaves that. And I think it's better because of it. You could have done so many interesting things along the way, but he chooses not to. And that's why that's part of the reason this movie still holds up and is such just one of the best movies that he's made, that anybody's made, really.
Absolutely. And I think you bring up a good point about the couple, because that, as much as we're talking about, we're only seeing Henry's perspective, we're actually seeing Henry and Karen's perspective. And it's a very rare movie where you have two different people giving voiceover.
Yeah.
Two different characters have their own voiceover narration. I'm sure it exists in other films. I can't think of another one where it's as prominent a part of it. But the idea that we're hearing from inside of Henry's mind and from inside of Karen's mind, it's I feel like that then changes how you look at the whole movie, because I think so many of these mafia movies, you're set up for it to be the man's story and women are somehow involved. And it's, Michael Corleone, he's got Kay, and then he goes off to Italy. He marries Apollonia. He comes back. Kay's waiting for him. I mean, but like the woman has an interesting role, but she's not as central to the story. And in Goodfellas, I think it's really making a statement that it's saying she is just as central to the story. She comes in later, but she's given that voiceover. And I think that's one of the only ways that you could say that she's kind of on equal footing with him. Maybe she's not quite on equal footing with it. It still is sort of Henry's story, but the fact that we're getting to hear from her perspective and not just see her a lot, I think is a big statement about what the film is really about.
Yeah. When that first comes in and it's like it changes from his voiceover and her voiceover comes into the film, it is kind of like a, whoa, what are we doing here? But then it just becomes very natural of, okay, yeah, it's interesting to get her perspective on him. And I think most of it is her perspective on him. She does have these scenes where she's talking about what it's like to live in the mafia. What are the women like and how are they named? And she explains like the wedding. And I think it's good to get that perspective of, at this point in the movie, we're getting an outsider's perspective again, just to catch us up with all these things that Henry sees as normal, but she would find strange. And so we get a little more of this like exposition in there of just explaining things for the audience as well. But it's done in a very interesting way where she's like, oh, wow, I didn't know, everybody's named Paul, and like everybody's like, what do we do with this money? And then hanging out with the women, and they're all named Marie, and they all just beat their kids and stuff. And it's like this really interesting, like, oh, that's what the mafia is like. And you get all perspectives. And that's what the thing, it's about these two people, but it's also gives you so much detail about the mafia as a whole. And somehow they're able to do that while still keeping the focus. So I think that was really fun. And I don't know, I would be interested to see, like, when did they think of that idea? Like, when did they add that into the story? Was that from the beginning? Did that come later? Because it seems like it could be risky, because just to go from your main guy and then just to add somebody new into this, it's a risk, but it worked really well here.
Yeah, I mean, I think it suggests that the movie is just as much about their relationship as it is about his story in particular. And I think, but it also, both of them are kind of outsider insiders. I mean, they're outsiders, but they're inside enough that they're welcomed in, but never fully welcomed in, not quite as much as they would have liked. And I think also the film Donnie Brasco, which is Johnny Depp plays an undercover cop who gets really deep into the mafia. And so deep, there's one great scene where he's told, his FBI, I don't know if it's the FBI or it's the undercover police, but they say, like, we can't protect you anymore, not because the mafia guys have realized that you're an undercover cop, but because they're just threatened by you as another mafia guy. Like they think like you might be in trouble just from what you're doing inside of the family, not because they know who you really are. Anyway, Donnie Brasco is another good one to check out. But I think the idea of being able to see with an outsider perspective, but close in enough that we're getting those insights. Because in The Godfather, there are a couple conversations that Michael has with Kay. That's sort of like the insight that the exposition to the audience, but most of it is just us observing the family. And I think here we really are getting to see a little bit of people figuring out how the mafia works. And I think that works really well for getting us, the audience, into it in a different way.
And the perspective being from somebody who's not really like a main guy. It kind of, when you watch this the first time, you kind of think, okay, so this Henry, like he's got to be one of the big guys. Jimmy, he's got to be one of the big guys. Tommy. And then you find out through like the end of the film, you're like, oh, these aren't even close to the main people that are involved in this. They're not running the show. They're kind of the wild cards, if anything. And that idea is very interesting to present of like, you could focus this on Paulie, like the main guy, you know, and it'd be like what they do in The Godfather, the people who are running the show, but to focus on these minor side characters, which if you're talking about the mafia there, these would be the lower class ranked guys just doing their own things that they don't have a lot of control or like they're not really concerned with them too much. And you don't get that sense until like way late in the movie because it seems like everything's revolving around Henry. And then at the end when Joe Pesci's character, Tommy, is supposed to get made, and, you know, this is a big moment because he's going to be in, no one can do anything to him, but they end up killing him. And for the other two, it's like, oh, that was our only chance to really be legitimate in this. And we're kind of going to be left by the side now. You know, we're not ever going to be fully in on this. And you're like, well, this whole movie, it seems like you've been very involved. And so I think that dynamic of we're going to focus on the mafia, you know, the story, you know, but the perspective is going to be from a perspective you wouldn't think that you'd build a movie around. You wouldn't think you'd want to build a movie around a guy who's just kind of on the fringes of the group, who's not actually fully in, isn't making a lot of these decisions. And I thought that was like the second time watch. I mean, I've seen this a bunch of times, but when you watch this again, you're like, oh yeah, like you just have to remind yourself. And I think that was an interesting choice.
Yeah, I mean, I think in many ways, I'm not sure that anyone has made this comparison, but hot take, I think Goodfellas is in many ways like an ultra-violent version of The Office, where like the Joe Pesci character is really Michael Scott, and he's the boss of this little regional office in Scranton, and he is just a buffoon, and he is the boss of this group kind of, but and I don't know, maybe Robert De Niro's it's unclear to me exactly how it's oriented, but he's the full Italian one, so I think he's a little bit higher up. But he's just a buffoon, and he's like, you know, I guess Michael Scott doesn't accidentally kill people that often, but just the idea that he's constantly messing things up, but you still have to answer to him as the boss. And every so often you get a glimpse of how low down the pecking order he actually is. Yeah. And I think then if you are the Henry Hill or the Jim Halpert character of this movie, you're getting to see like, I kind of recognize that this guy is crazy, but he is my boss. And so I sort of have to go along with it. And I think it's in some ways, it is the, you know, it's just the American middle management story of people who are in charge of you who are not good at their jobs.
It's about middle management. That's funny. So Robert De Niro would be Dwight, and Jim would be the Ray Liotta, and then we've got Tommy as the Joe Pesci would be the Michael Scott characters. That's a good combo right there. So that is interesting though, that take of like, it's basically middle management. Like these people are like, we care a lot in this film what happens to them, but to the mafia, to like the bigger picture of the group that they're a part of, they're just expendable, you know, like if they die, they die. Like they willingly kill Joe Pesci's character off because he made a mistake earlier and they found out like, well, then just kill him. Like it's not that big a deal. And that's another thing at play here of the, like these stakes are so high. This is a life or death. This is, you could die at any moment. And yet the money's there, obviously, but like as far as like notoriety goes and like where they are, like at the end of the film, when the FBI come to him, it's because he has all this information. They want the big guys. They don't want him. Like the reason he's not taken in and goes to jail is because they want the bigger guys. And that actually works out to his favor in the end of like, he gets away. I mean, kind of gets away. He goes into, you know, custody into hiding, but it's because he wasn't higher up in the organization than what he was. And so that's another like thing at play here of like this middle management part of it. That's really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I think a lot of this too, getting back to the mafia specific part of this, is it strips away a lot of the romance of like The Godfather, that I think that is a little, you know, it is Shakespearean, and it's this big, you know, and the idea that like Michael says, you know, senators and presidents do this same kind of thing, and who's being naive, that whole conversation. I think the idea that we are basically doing the same thing as any businessman would do. And I think when we see in Goodfellas is, no, they're not. Like, these are kind of incompetent. They're always stealing from each other. Like, they don't have a code that really is supposed to be the center of their ethos, that,
Right.
we look after each other. And it's because they don't help when Henry's in prison. They don't help with the mortgage. They tell Karen to take the kids to get on welfare. They're not, like, when the times are good, they're all buying stuff. But when the times are bad, they disappear. And I think that, like, it's not a family. It's not a family at all. They don't help each other. And they're constantly fighting and killing each other. And I like, we see more mob on mob violence than we see innocent people getting killed. And I think that idea, it's taking away some of that, like that mystique of, they're honorable thieves. They're not at all.
Yeah. And that's hard to wrap your mind around, because you don't get other perspectives in this film. The whole movie, your only perspective is inside of the mafia. And even Karen has, like, her monologue. She's like, you just start thinking it's normal because you don't ever interact with anybody outside of your group. But as the audience, that's also what's happening. You start thinking the way they're operating is normal because you don't get an outsider's perspective until the very end when the FBI show up. And then you're kind of like snapped out of it, of like, oh yeah, there's a whole world going on. There's all these things, like, other people live in this world, but it's just so focused that it's hard. Like, as an audience, I think you feel a lot of sympathy, even unknowingly, even if you don't realize it's what's going on, but you're just so involved and care about these characters. And I think a big part of that is because you don't see the people they're harming, or you don't see, like, the perspective of just a normal person that's walking down the street or who owns the store. Like, these are all just so minimal in the telling of this story. And I think that also goes a long way to make it work, because if you had all those outsiders, like if you had, like, in The Godfather, they have scenes with the Senate or with, like, these outside agencies. It's like, oh, you have to think about what's going on here and consider, is this good or bad? And I don't think this film's trying to do that until the end. It's trying to get you in, and at the end, it kind of pulls the rug out from under you. But that's like a later down the road thing. I think it wants you to just be so involved and feel like you're in it the whole time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that perspective on it, where the things just become normal. And I think we see a few things. Karen talks about how she looks at other men as just being lazy for not hustling. Like, these other men, they have their regular job or whatever, and then they don't do anything else. They're just sitting on their bums. And whereas our husbands are going out, and they have to cut a few corners, but that's the only way to make it. And I think that is very common, not necessarily just in the mafia, but I think that kind of thinking in today, the era of the side hustle, the era of the grind. It's like, where is the line between, hustling and, working hard versus scamming and looking for, looking for ways to cut corners and take advantage of people. I think that kind of thinking, but there could be a sense of, well, he's working hard at hijacking that truck. And so that counts as good, honest work.
It takes a lot of skill to do what he's doing. Yeah.
There's also, I think, there's a scene where they've taken a body to bury it.
Oh, yeah.
Ray Liotta comes home and he's washing out the car trunk, and Karen's walking by with the kids, and she just remarks about how disgusting it smells. And I thought that moment says so much, because it's not that she is unaware of anything, but it's that she's acting like, yeah, that's gross. But the thought that, like, there was a dead body, she's not asking questions, but it can't be inconceivable to her that that's what was going on. I don't know if she knows or not, but I don't think she would be utterly shocked and need answers to questions. And so it's this moment of, it feels real, but real once you've accepted that all of these terrible things are happening and that your husband is doing them.
Yeah, you see the consequences of your actions a lot in this film, of like, let's take this, if you do this, then this is what's going to happen next, and then this, and then this, and then all the way through. And I love that scene of him cleaning his car in the driveway, because it's like, well, it's his house. It's in the middle of the day. His family is there and his kids are there. It's like you don't have another spot where you can do this. And it also kind of like, I guess, implies where he is in the pecking order of things. It's like, you just got to take care of this. You just go home, get your own hose from your house, and you clean it out. It's like, where is this all going? Where's the blood going? And all these things are just done just right there. But what other option does he have? Like, this is just part of the life. And so I like that it gives you those unglamorous parts as well. Like that. And then the fact, they had to go and re-dig up a body after they've already buried it. Like, there's so many just bad aspects of this that also put you in the mindset of, well, they are kind of earning it. They're doing way more than other people would do. And it's not like it's an easy thing to do all of this. So that puts you in that mindset as well from an audience perspective.
Yeah. And it's this kind of perverse flip of like this super suburban, like dad at home on the weekend washing the car, like with the family there. It's like,
that's what the neighbors think. Yeah.
Yeah. It's, I had this idea once I'm not a video game designer, but I had this idea for, like an add-on to Grand Theft Auto. I guess Grand Theft Auto 6 is coming out, but I had an idea for an add-on to Grand Theft Auto where you just go around and make amends to the families of all the people you've hurt. It's just
you just writing sorry notes.
It wouldn't sell well, but I think the idea of like maybe just have it as like a hidden level where you just go express.
That could be an add-on. Yeah, you just buy it as an add-on, and it's like, okay, now you got to clean your car. Now you got to go get your car repaired. You need to buy more ammo for your weapons, all the little minor details that you got to do.
All
to
those
live
little
that life.
things. Yeah. I thought it was interesting too when Karen brings all that stuff into the jail when Henry's in jail. And she's like, I had to sneak all this in. And she just takes out giant baguettes and like giant, like big amounts of food from her coat.
Salami,
and I guess the idea there is that the mafia is not being treated like regular prisoners. They're being allowed to sneak this stuff in. But it's this funny line of like, I'm sneaking it in. How much are you sneaking that in? That's an enormous amount of stuff that you're sneaking in.
Yeah. Did you sneak that in or they just let you bring that in? Yeah.
Yeah. And I've worked in a prison and I've never snuck that amount of stuff in. It's
that amount. Okay.
That amount.
Something you got in though.
You spend enough time in a prison going through that security, you can see like where the holes are. I mean, there's a reason why people still get a lot of contraband in prison, but I don't think at that scale that it's happening. But I think that the point is that in that scene, he still is in the family. He's still sort of under the protection. Jail isn't so bad. He's having a much better life in jail than she is on the outside at that point.
Yeah. That's true. And he's got stuff going on, even though they're kind of left on their own. And it gives you this idea of like, you never quite know how important the mafia is, where the lines are. It all seems kind of blurry of like, could they do that? Yeah, that seems, I guess they could. But also I could see they wouldn't be able to do that. And like this whole film of like these blurry edges, where is their power extend? What is too far? Because at the end of the film, it all comes crashing down. But during the film, it's this, like they're just living so large as if they do run the world. But I think if you had an outside perspective, it would seem like these people are of no significance to most people outside of like their neighborhood or their little community. And like maybe they're bringing drug deals in and they're doing stuff, but like for most people, they would never interact with them. This would not come up on their radar. This is just like another person that they would meet. But it's like the sense of scale that they give you in this film is really kind of hard to wrap your mind around.
So one question I have about the film is the level of brutality. Do you find that exciting? Is it off-putting? Is it important to the story? Because I think there's a level at which that could turn a lot of people off. I think there's also a level at which it then just becomes a fun, violent, like you're maybe missing some of the deeper themes there because you're just there for the fun, like it. I mean, it's not fun, I guess, to see people be killed, but it is viscerally exciting, those scenes. And so does the film deliver on this excitement? Is that an important part of it?
Yeah, I think that you could say this for a lot of Scorsese films in general, that there is this stylized violence to it. I think Tarantino does that really well. Also, like, at what extent is it just like, are you watching the violence and it's so stylized and it's so fun and like it's like candy, like you just like it without considering what it actually means or the consequences of it. I think in this film in particular, though, it works because at some point you start to get desensitized to it, to where it doesn't seem like it's as big a deal as it did. Like that opening shot, they open the trunk and they stab him and you're like, oh, like that's kind of shocking. But when they come back to that scene and you see it, it doesn't have the same effect. And I think it's showing, like, it's putting you in the place of the three guys in the mafia and like how this would be normal to them. And while it starts off as like this strange thing, you soon get so desensitized to it that it's just like a cool thing that happened. It's just kind of like this side thing of like, yeah, that was just part of it. That's just how it happened. And you kind of move on. And it's exciting and engaging for like a few seconds, and then you're on to the next thing. And I think that's intentional. I think that's what he meant to do. Is that what you think from this film?
Yeah, I mean, I think he likes to both make a statement with that violence and a little bit have his cake and eat it too. Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to say that this is a bad thing, but I'm also going to make it exciting. I think he spent his whole career doing that, and I enjoy it. But I think it is a little bit like we are both. I mean, and maybe that's, I don't know if that's a bad thing or a good thing, but like in the sense of like, is he taking the easy way out by playing into that exploitation and just giving the audience what they want, or is it an important point of, you know, commenting on, we, the audience, are complicit in this because we enjoy the violence that says something about us. I don't know, but I mean, I think the film is like full of crazy fun action, and it's shocking, and I think I think it's important though, because it tells you these are not good people. And I think that's like, it's not that they are having tough battles against enemies that happen to be brutal. It's, I'm going to stab this guy who's helpless in a trunk of a car. I'm going to shoot this guy for absolutely no reason. I mean, it's things like that where I think it gives us some insight into their characters.
Yeah. And then by the time, like, you kind of are involved in that. And then at the end of the film, when the cops show up and they get him, you almost kind of feel like relief. Instead of feeling sad for these guys, like instead of like this big letdown, it's kind of a relief of like, okay, now they can finally just get this, you know, because it's so much tension at the end. It's like, it's high anxiety. It's like living on the edge your whole life of like, the back of your mind, you know, they can't do this forever. Maybe they can. I don't know. Like, they're going to get caught. There's other people, but you don't really want to go there fully and like think about that. And the movie doesn't really let you think about that until the end when the police show up, and then you finally get to. And to me, it just feels like an, oh, finally, like, we're done with this. There's a relief to this. There's kind of some like, we've done this whole thing, and now we're finished. And I'm happy about that. Even though I liked the ride, I'm happy the ride is over. It's like you come to the end of a roller coaster. You're like, that was good. Like, I'm not going to get back on right away. I need like some time to like decompress for a minute. And I think that is a really like a fun, like an interesting aspect of this film, that they can pull that very end of it into this to bring you down, to give them like some closure on everything. Because I think you could, you know, put that all, like they have the text at the end of like, this is what happened next. And, you know, in these stories, you could skip it, like that ending scene, and just kind of end it while he's in the middle of being in the mafia. And that could be a fun story too. But I'm glad that they chose to finish it off and be like, okay, now he's gone, and kind of give him this little ending monologue there.
Yeah. I mean, and I think it's an important part of this, the realism of, and the movie is highly stylized. So I wouldn't say it's a realistic, naturalistic. It's not naturalistic in the way that it's shown, but it's realistic in the sense that it's exploring what life would really be like for people at this level. And I think the idea that it ends either in death or in this pretty pathetic kind of existence afterward. And I don't know if Henry Hill ended up, I don't know that much about his life afterward, except that he was a frequent caller to the Howard Stern show, and he would like call in and he would tell stories about his mafia days, but also just be like drunk. And Howard Stern show was a morning show, so it's like, okay, what? It's like you're drunk in Arizona at 7 in the Eastern time morning. That's a weird experience. But I think that idea that this life is not glamorous, which
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really important point of the movie, but I think that also what's so important that I wanted to make sure we talk about this, that scene as they enter the Copa, where they enter the club,
Oh yeah.
and it's a very famous shot because it's all one shot as they're entering, they're walking past all of these different people. And I think that scene is there are glimpses of glamour in this life, and those glimpses of glamour keep you sucked in, even though the life in general never ends well. And I think that's a really important part of the movie, but they needed to also show those glimpses of glamour in it.
Yeah. And that's true. Like they're going to show, if they're going to stylize this, it's going to make this seem so fun. It is nice that they at least give you the end of it of like, this is nothing. And when they're in that courtroom, the three of them, and you're like, oh, these guys are just nothing in this courtroom. They have no power here. It's just like, they're just going away. Like the way that the government treats them is just as if they treated their, the lower class men in their mafia, just like they're all expendable. Like, what do we care? Just get these guys out of here. We're just using them for information, or they're going to go to jail. And that sense is, that's a good way to end a film that you've spent so much time building up how cool this lifestyle is. And then at the end, when Henry is like giving his monologue, he's like, what I miss most is the lifestyle. And so I think that's a part of like this film of showing the lifestyle, the highs, the lows, the details, the good parts and the bad parts. And, showing it all to its fullest, showing how it ends. And then Henry is living a normal life, but he's like, I hate this life. Like, it's not the same because I don't have the power. I can't just park wherever I want to park. I don't get good food anymore. And that's what he's complaining about. He just wants to go back to it. He didn't learn anything. He's not like a changed man, It's like he's addicted to the lifestyle. And I think it does say something about that. Like, what is it about this lifestyle? Why do people go after this? And why is it that no matter the consequences, you're still searching after that? You're still going to go back to it.
Yeah. I read a great article in the Rolling Stone years ago about this guy in Wyoming who I think he had a successful construction business, and then he introduced heroin to Wyoming, and he became, that's like this downfall of this guy. But he made less money selling heroin than he had with his construction business.
Oh my gosh.
And it's this thing of like, people are, I don't know if it's the lifestyle or if it's the allure of the quick buck, even if it's less bucks than if you had just worked at your normal job. But there's something about that people latch onto. So, okay, so is this a great film? Is this a fun, violent gangster movie, but it's not really great cinema? Where would you put Goodfellas?
I consider this one of the greater films. Like, if you're going to see a classic work of cinema, a great work of cinema, this would be up there. This has to be. I think this is one of Scorsese's best of the ones I've seen. I think it is also a fun, violent, action-packed movie, but there is so much going on here. And I think just the details of it, the technical aspects of it all around, like you said, the Ray Liotta character, like, doesn't get all the attention. Great acting though. Like, this guy put on one of the great performances, and everybody in this movie does. The way it's filmed, the way it's edited, going back to that editing, like, it's just so well done all around that the fun aspect of it becomes like not as essential. Like, even if this wasn't the fun, they didn't have all the stylized violence, I think there's just so much here that propels it past just a normal, regular like mafia movie. I think this is just one of the greatest films I've seen.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a really fun, a little bit that same Children of Men problem of it works on a superficial level, but I also think that it's saying something deeper. It's I think that exploration of the marriage. I think that exploration of and the time passing. We see things in the beginning, and then we see them play out later. And you thought that you were earning something, and it turns out no one has your back, and all of those kind of reflections on life, I think, are much more thoughtful than just a pulpy action movie. So I really think it is a great film.
How would you remake it if you had to? If the studios backed the truck up and paid you, what would you do?
But this now takes us to, if we were to remake it, so to do a family-friendly version of Goodfellas, the Hollywood studio wants to give us a lot of money to do it, but they want to know, how could you possibly do it? What would you say?
Very tough ask of this. I feel like I'm trying to do Pulp Fiction again. Like, it's just so brutal and violent the whole time, dealing with bad people. But if I was going to do a family-friendly version, I think you stay with the kid. Like, you start with him as a kid, and I think instead of turning bad, he turns good. Maybe he turns people in or something. But I like the idea of like a kid in Brooklyn having the allure of joining the mafia and like slowly working his way in, and then seeing what it's like, and then maybe having a choice presented to him of doing some illegal deal. I don't think murder should be it for a family-friendly movie, but like something a little illegal, something sketchy that his mom finds out about, or a friend, and is able to kind of convince him out of it. And in doing so, he is able to put a stop to the mafia in his neighborhood and like bring the neighborhood to a better place. And I think if you had the focus like from the beginning on doing the right thing instead of like the glamour of the lifestyle, that could be an interesting way to do it. I don't think it's the same movie at all, but it could be a little more family friendly.
We're just going to tell the O'Hare Airport in Chicago is named after a guy who was a flying ace in World War II, whose father had ruined his life as a working for Al Capone, and he brought dishonor on the family. And so the younger O'Hare like distinguished himself specifically so that he could save the family name.
Oh.
And so
yeah, that type of a story.
You could just tell his story.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a departure, but my thought was I was like, what is the core of this movie? Because there are a lot of different ways you could take it, but I was thinking of the Henry and Karen story, and like these two people, maybe we don't make it romantic and married, but we make it like friends, and it's like this idea of how involved are like this close relationship. But am I being brought into something that I want to be part of? Or what kind of compromises am I making? But I thought we set it at summer camp, and it's like Henry is the teenager, maybe 12-year-old who's selling, contraband candy at summer camp. The older kids have snuck in, a giant thing of candy, and now he's sort of the lower man on the pecking order, like out selling the candy to other campers. And then it's this whole sort of like, how does he fit in? So there isn't violence in the same way, but at summer, pillow fights at summer camp, different summer camp shenanigans. You could sort of like do it like kids at summer camp as a stand-in for the Goodfellas level violence, and sort of just see it all within that kind of lens. I think you would lose a lot. You would lose almost everything important, but you could keep some aspects of the plot, just sort of map it onto that summer camp experience.
Yeah. You could have him like even choose the bad route, and at the end, he gets found out and he has to go to detention or something, or misses out on some of that. And you're like, okay, that's his punishment. Like, he got what was coming to him.
Yep. He's like he has to eat at the counselor's table in the dining hall,
yeah.
And the other campers won't have him or whatever. But, okay, what about the no-budget version of Goodfellas? And I would say mafia movies are popular enough that there have been a lot of low-budget takes on mafia movies. But where did you go with this?
Yeah, with this one in particular, I was trying to keep the same characters. I think if you wanted to go low-budget, you could focus the movie around Paulie instead of around the Henry character. Because Paulie's the head, and we have this intro to him of like, he doesn't go anywhere because he doesn't need to. People come to him. So I think if you were to have him in his house or wherever he's at, like his compound, mansion, whatever, and you can have people come to him, tell him what's going on, he tells them what to do, and they leave, and then you kind of get this narrative of what's going on outside of the world, outside of the house, based on the people that are coming and going. I don't think it'd be as interesting, but I think you could tell a compelling story just by word of mouth, or people coming in bloodied, or people could be like, oh, this guy's gone. And you kind of have some consequences that you could see without seeing a ton of action or violence, and just keeping it very contained to one location. That'd be my pitch.
I like that. I was thinking of a mashup of the Tom Hardy movie Lock with the other Tom Hardy movie, The Drop. So I don't know, but the idea of like if Ray Liotta is in his car, and it's difficult to shoot in a car, but if you're saying the whole movie's going to be just shot basically from the car, and it's like we're seeing one night, and he needs to do a whole bunch of stuff tonight. He's going from his wife, his girlfriend. He's meeting up with Paulie. He's meeting up with Tommy. He's collecting money from this guy. He's going to this. And we're seeing just in microcosm all of these different relationships. And there's some kind of high stakes. Like, I've got these kind of family things going on. My girlfriend is on me too. And then I have, there's some kind of, this money needs to be collected from this person and paid to that person. I think there's a lot of drama inherent to that idea of the guy in the middle, where I both owe money to some person and I am collecting it from another person. I think that kind of thing you could have something interesting with. So if you were going to remake this as an ongoing series or a Netflix 10-parter, what would you do, Andrew?
I think there's a lot here that you could make a really fun TV series out of. I mean, you have The Sopranos, but if you were to take this story specifically about Henry and Jimmy and Tommy and Paulie, like if you took that core, I think there's like, we mentioned earlier, you don't see the Lufthansa heist. That would be interesting to see. There's so much of these side deals going on because it's a story of somebody's life, like from beginning to end. I think you could do flashbacks to earlier years if you started in present day. But I think it'd be really interesting to see this story told in a longer form where you get more of the side stories that we don't get in this film. And I think it'd be fun to see Paulie's perspective. It'd be fun to see what Tommy and Jimmy are doing when they're not with Henry. I think there's just, this world is so interesting. The way that it's set up and stylized is very interesting. And the way that Scorsese does it, I think I would really like to see more of this. I think it could go, like the film when it ended, I'm like, I didn't even feel the length of this film. I think you could get a lot more out of this.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think this sort of lends itself to a TV show. And we didn't really talk about The Sopranos, but I think that is such a good and yet another generation of mafia sort of exploration, that you've got Godfather, Goodfellas, and The Sopranos. I think those might be the three sort of different takes on mafia life that I think are the most important. So hard to beat The Sopranos. There was an English show called, I think it was called Gold or The Gold, about this big gold bullion robbery. But I think that idea of the Lufthansa heist specifically, if you had a show that was just about that heist, and where, and you could be like, here's the heist, and now we're flashing back to the people involved. We're flashing forward to what goes on afterward, and it's just about that heist. We get to see a lot of the people and all of their stories who are involved in this, and maybe we spend a whole bunch of episodes like, here's the heist, we're going to introduce you to these people, and they make a big point in Goodfellas about how many people were involved, so we could see their different stories leading into this, and then also what ends up happening with them after. I think that would be one way of just sort of focusing in on one aspect of this in a really compelling way. Would any of those be better than the film?
Probably not. This is an all-timer, I feel like. Really good movie. But again, like we said, the whole story that it's built around, there's just so many ways to go with it. It's kind of like the zombie movies last week. You could go with zombies so many ways. You can go with mafia stories so many ways. There's always going to be a fun new twist on this that I'm open to. It's hard to beat this one, though.
I agree. I think Goodfellas really is strong, and I think it works so well in the way that it's edited together, the way that it tells this story. What do you think about recommending it? If we agree it's a great work of cinema, how do you feel about recommending it to people? What caveats would you give? Who would you recommend it to?
Right. Because I feel like this is a harder recommend than even The Godfather. I feel like a lot more people could get over The Godfather. This has a lot of edginess to it, even though it was made in the 90s. This is still kind of jarring, I feel like, even for a lot of people. I would have a tougher time recommending this to everybody. But I feel like if you knew them, like if you knew that they could handle this type of violence, that's really the only thing, is the amount of violence and the way it's portrayed. That might be rough for some people. But I'd still, recommend it for most people.
If you could survive the first 2 minutes of it, you'll probably be fine.
You'll know right away. Yeah.
Yeah. It is. I think this is also, I think a lot of people would love it without being big film fans. I think this is the kind of movie that a lot of people not thinking too deeply would really like, which is maybe troubling. Maybe they enjoy the violence a little too much. But I think if you are, I do think if you are not into this level of violence, you're going to miss a lot in Goodfellas. So this might not be the movie for you if you're really going to be troubled by that. But if you can sit through that, I think there's so much more depth to this than just a violent slasher film kind of thing. There's a lot more going on here. So great film. It is very violent, fair amount of drug use. But I think a really good film that is worth seeing, and I think it's a valuable film to exist. So
Yeah.
Right, and there we have it. Thank you so much for joining us for this week of How to Make Films and Influence People. Check us out at howtomakefilmspodcast.com, and we'll see you next time.